Hi, my name is Zoe Francois from Zoebakes and welcome to my kitchen. I am going to show you how to do the final coat of frosting on your cake. This cake was crumb coated. I made a video on how to crumb coat, so please watch that. It is crumb coated, which just means that all of the crumbs are locked onto the cake with the frosting. It's stiff to the touch, which means that icing is going nowhere. So I can confidently put the next layer of the frosting onto my cake without any of the crumbs ending up on the outside of the cake, which is our goal. We don't want to have all kinds of crumbs on the outside of the cake. So you crumb coat first, and now we can do the final coat. I have my buttercream all mixed up. I just took it off of the mixer so it's nice and smooth. If your buttercream has been sitting for any amount of time, you want to either put it back onto the mixer with the paddle attachment and just give it a few very slow turns. You don't want to whip it on high and put a lot of air into it. You just want it to very slowly smooth out your icing, get rid of any of the air bubbles, and then you can go ahead and finish your cake. So a couple stirs with my rubber spatula. And then I'm just gonna put a big blob of the frosting onto the top of my cake. Now, before I do that, I wanted to show you that my cake is on a cake turner. I find for this task, a cake turner is essential. It'll just make your life so much easier. See how it freely rotates on the stand? That just makes life easier when you're decorating a cake. This is a really nice sturdy one. I'll link to it below. There are less expensive ones. You can even use a Lazy Susan, anything that will rotate smoothly to make your life easier. Okay, so once you have it centered on your cake stand, then you can add your frosting right to the top, a big old blob of it. Probably more than you think you need. I always make a double batch of buttercream. In Zoe Bakes cakes, I made a big batch of buttercream. I always find it's better to have more than less. If you have too little buttercream, you want to get skimpy with it. So it's better to have extra, and you can always freeze the extra buttercream. Okay, so a big old blob right on top. To smooth out our buttercream, I am going to use a metal decorating spatula. You can go with a straight, flat one, or you can go with what's called an offset. It doesn't matter. Whichever one is more comfortable for you to use is the one that you should use. So try them both and see which one just feels better in your hands. I'm gonna go with the straight one for today. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take that nice big blob that's right on my cake, and I'm gonna smooth it out flat. So I'm just gonna sort of rock my spatula back and forth, pushing it out to the edges. And I'm just going to the edge. My goal here is that I'm getting this sort of like flat surface on the top. I don't want it to be mounded. I don't want it to be slanted. I want that top to be nice and flat. And I want that top to go just beyond the edge of the cake. So I am basically like making an icing plate that sits right, or a cap that sits right on top of my cake and goes just beyond it. And you'll see in a minute why I'm doing that. You don't want it to go too far, otherwise it's gonna flop over. You want it to just kind of like sit out on the sides and have that just very, very slightly going beyond the edge. Okay, so once I have that pretty flat, don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm gonna start basically just spackling the sides. I'm not worried about these sides looking pretty yet. So I just want to make sure they're nice and covered. Because I did my crumb coat, I don't have to be quite as careful about picking up crumbs from the cake, which is why we do it. It's a nice guarantee. So spackle this right on. When you're coming off of the cake, when you're taking your spatula off of the cake, you want to sort of go back and forth and then come off at an angle. You don't want to pull it straight off. Otherwise, you're going to create spikes on the cake, or worse yet, you're going to take the icing off and take those crumbs with it. So when you're pulling your spatula off of the cake, do it at a slight angle. So rock it back and forth. And when you come off, just come off at an angle, and it just naturally and gracefully does it. So let me cover this cake exactly the same way, going all the way around, trying to keep it as straight up and down as you can so that you're not creating a slope or you're not creating a shelf. So straight up and down, all the way around your cake. So now my cake is entirely covered. It's not pretty, it's not elegant, but it is covered. And it's covered pretty well. So spin it around, make sure that it's totally covered. If you have any holes at the bottom, this is the time to fill them in. And just make sure that it's totally covered. For the most part, it looks pretty straight up and down. If your cake is not looking straight up and down, you can take some of the excess icing off with your spatula by just rubbing it on the icing. You don't want to take too much off. Now, we're gonna smooth it out. So once you're sure that the cake is totally encased in buttercream, now we're gonna make it pretty. We're gonna take our spatula and make sure it's nice and clean. If your spatula has buttercream on it, the buttercream is gonna stick to it and it's gonna pull it off. You wanna make sure that it's nice and clean and nice and smooth. We're gonna start by holding our spatula straight up and down at about a 20-degree angle. So not flat on the cake like this, but at a slight angle. Hopefully you can see what I mean. So basically like that as an angle away from the cake. And then we are just gonna very, very gently press it to the cake. I am barely pressing it to the cake, and I'm just holding the spatula straight up and down, and I'm letting the turntable, do the work for me. When I come off, I've scraped just the tiniest bit. You don't want to be holding this so tight onto the cake that you're taking all of that buttercream off, but you want to very gradually flatten out your cake. So scrape off that buttercream, and we'll do it again. So just straight up and down, holding it onto your cake, and just very, very steadily making it smoother. So you can see I'm taking off so little as I'm doing it because I'm barely putting any pressure onto the cake. The other tool that you can use for this is a bench scraper. It is just a standard old bench scraper. The ones that have a nice right angle, you can hold that same thing, about a 20-degree angle, onto your cake, right on that cake board, and just turn your cake like this. And again, you don't want to put too much pressure on it. You don't want to be taking all of your buttercream off, but just letting the tool make it straight for you. So just making sure that it's straight up and down and just barely hovering that onto your cake. Okay, so how smooth you want it, that's up to you. It depends. Are you gonna put a lot of decorations on it? Is it just gonna be a very classic, elegant, smooth-sided cake? If so, you need to keep going until it's nice and smooth. You have to stop at some point, otherwise you're gonna end up taking all of the buttercream off. So this is actually looking pretty good to me. So you can either use your bench scraper, or you can use your spatula and just give it a final hit with that. And now I need to smooth out the top. I'm gonna take my spatula once again, clean it off. I'm gonna start at the front of the cake. And remember when we did that very first move where we put the buttercream onto the cake and we spread it out just beyond the sides of the cake? Well, now those sides that we pushed out there have gone straight up. And so I have a little bit of a crown almost at the top of my cake. And that's so that I can get a really nice smooth top and a nice crisp edge to my cake. So that crown is what we are now gonna smooth out. I'm gonna take my spatula, again at about a 20-degree angle, and I'm going to just take that crown and drive it towards the center of the cake and lift up when I hit the center. You don't want to come all the way across, otherwise you'll take that crown on the other side and drive it off the edge. Wipe off any excess on your bowl and turn your cake and do it again. So just take 20-degree angle, very lightly pull it towards you, and just keep going. That's it. And now we have a really nice flat top to our cake. This is the point where you want to get down and take a look at the top of your cake. So come down here, give your cake a spin. If it's not entirely flat, this is when you can do it. So very subtly do the same exact motion and just take little bits of that icing off until you have a nice flat surface. This is pretty close, really close. And again, if you're gonna be putting a ton of decorations on this or decorating it with flowers, don't go crazy trying to get this perfectly smooth because it's gonna be covered anyway. So it really depends what your final vision is for your cake as to how smooth you need to get this. But that looks great. I have a basic clean canvas for any decorating that I wanna do. And it's super simple. We're just very slowly smoothing it out. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you found this helpful. Share it with friends, like it. Also leave comments and let me know what other videos you'd like to see, and come back and bake with me some more. Okay, one more thing before I let you go. How to get the cake off of the turntable. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my spatula, I'm going to run it underneath that cardboard. That's why I use the cardboard, because it makes getting it off of here so much easier. I'm gonna lift it up with the spatula, stick my fingers under there, and then slide it off to the side, and then I can pick it up with my hands and put it in the refrigerator. Thanks.